Please open up to the mini lessons section of your reader's notebook behind the gray tab and copy this chart. There are different genres of fiction books. We read lots of them in school. 4 of them that you've heard, 3 of them you've heard in interactive read aloud, and the bottom one we'll talk some more about. But starting with realism on the side, you can see the word real in there. And so books that are showing realism could happen in real life. So the first one we talk about is Better Than You. And remember, that was the one that had the friend who was always telling people that he was better than them at everything. That book was made up, but it could really happen. There was nothing in it that happened that was unrealistic. So the genre is called realistic fiction. It's just a deeper part of fiction. So put realistic fiction, put the book title, Better Than You, and then the genre would be realistic fiction. And the characteristic of realistic fiction is that the story could happen in real life, even though the characters are made up. The next one in realism is the Kabishibai Man. The Kabishibai Man took place long ago. So that one is historical fiction. Historical means it takes place in the past. And this one had a flashback to it. It started out with the Kabishibai Man was old, and then he was remembering his days as a young man being the Kabishibai Man. There are 3 characteristics we can put down for historical fiction. The problem in the story is based on real events of the past. So Kamishibai, or paper theater, was a real form of entertainment that people in Japan used to have. And it was more for people who couldn't afford to go out and do a lot of stuff. It started in the 20s and 30s, and around the world at that time there was a natural depression, and there was stock market crashes in America, and lots of people didn't have money. So the Kamishibai Man provided this entertainment, and it was very cheap. They just would buy a piece of candy and watch the show. So that was pretty fun. So it was a problem based on real events in the past. The story and the characters are imagined. So the author, Alan Say, knew about the Kamishibai, and he just made up a story that might have gone with it. It's still realistic, but it happens in the past. And that's the third characteristic, that the setting is in the past. 2 other kinds of fiction go in the fantasy section. One type is like the Crane Wife, traditional literature. That includes things like fairy tales and folk tales and fables. They're really old stories. They have elements to the story that can't happen in the real world, like in the Crane Wife, how his wife turned into a crane. So they can't happen in the real world. They have some characters that are not real, like the swan, or the crane, and her becoming a woman, but then the man could have been real. And sometimes in those kind of stories, they trick each other, like a lot of our fables are like that. Another type is science fiction. And we haven't read the one that's pictured here, but most of you have probably read the Magic Tree House books. So the Magic Tree House books are science fiction or fantasy because they have time travel in them. The kids can go up into the tree house and travel back in time. Sometimes science fiction has technology that's not yet invented. If you think of like the Star Wars books or movies, a lot of times they can move from place to place by teleportation and things like that. And often they'll have alien characters or take place in outer space. So if you copy this chart down into your mini lesson portion of your notebook, you have a lot of good information there about